Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com. You can find cool stuff in stock every day, and check out our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. And check out our altar sleeve. Support the show by using the code MagicMics at checkout for 5% off anything in the store. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl.
Hey, guys.
Ruben Bressler.
Hey everybody, it's the best one of the year. We love this show because it's the worst.
People, this should get fairly high ratings, as they say. This will do numbers.
Yeah, this is the algorithm's favorite.
They're just going to love it, let me tell you. Well, look, we're going to get started here with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent and letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 best cards of 2021. Ruben?
Well, maybe this card will be on one of our top 10 worst because of the things that it did to the format that it ruined. But Good Ship Zion was short and sweet when they wrote, Chatterstorm Wrecked Pauper. That card is nuts.
You know, it's the soul of wit is brevity.
Squirrels. Yeah,
I got it.
Well, Chatterstorm, if you don't know, is a green and generic mana for a common sorcery that says create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token. And that's it. Doesn't say anything else. It doesn't put the most broken mechanic of all time on it. Oh, yeah, it's got Storm. So when you cast a spell, copy it for each spell cast before it this turn. That's dumb. And that's nuts. And that's where we're at in our lives right now. So congratulations to Good Ship Zion. Please contact us on social media for your prize. Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway. And stay tuned for our top 10 list this week. And maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate because we're talking about our top 10 worst cards. It's so much fun. I'm not going to lie.
It is.
This is one of the best, funnest shows we can film all year because it's silly. It's over the top. Let you complain about whatever you want to complain about. Let's get rolling. Ruben, what's your number 10?
I have a pet peeve, and that is the usage of the word the to name a card.
Okay.
My number 10, 9, 8, and 7 are all thes. Wow. And it just makes me upset. When you name a card the, you'd better deserve it. If you come at the king, you best not miss. You know what I mean? And, you know, we have had a couple live up to the name, like last week's The Meat Hook Massacre. Mm-hmm. But when you call a card the, and you're not legendary, it is very difficult to just encapsulate how mad the fan base gets and how there's like a big disconnect there. And oh, by the way, it's called the World Tree. Like, I get what they were trying to do here, that the World Tree is on all worlds and there are multiple world trees, and that's sort of how the Legend of Yggdrasil works. But like, come on. Well, like, who are we kidding here? The World Tree should be a legendary land. It's very upsetting that this was named this way.
Yeah.
Also, it's got a bunch of text that no one ever uses. The World Tree is a land. It's a rare from Kaldheim that enters the battlefield tapped and taps to add a green. As long as you control 6 or more lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Then it's got a bunch of text on it. White, white, blue, blue, black, black, red, red, green, green, tap, sacrifice the World Tree, search your library for any number of god cards, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This is upsetting in like Field of the Dead brawl decks. It is like broken in the wrong ways and not. And the last line of text does nothing. So
it doesn't do nothing.
I've never seen it activated.
This is the kind of card. No, but this is the kind of card that either is absolutely terrible or is going to ruin a format accidentally because it turns out all the god cards interacted in some weird way that just auto won or something. But until then, it's just a kind of a meh casual thing? ?
Like, if you sack it with Maskwood Nexus in play, you get to get all of your cards, which you can do in limited, which is really, really fun.
That's pretty great. I like that.
Because all of your creatures are every type, and then you sack your World Tree, and then you just get to bring every creature from your deck onto the battlefield. Because it says you control, not that, like,
yeah.
Right, and then you feel the snow in your face because you're in a magical Christmas land, and there's there's sleigh bells in the background. It's absolutely terrific.
Sometimes you get to be in Christmas land, and it's great.
Fair enough. Nerd Girl, what's your number 10?
So my number 10 is kind of the one standalone card. I like my top 10 lists because you're ranking something. So I hate when I can't decide how to rank my cards. Like there are a lot of qualifications that make something a bad card. So for the most part, I decided to go with things that were painful or ruined a format or painful for a format or something. But this one is kind of the little outlier. And that is because I felt like the name didn't do the card justice, similar to Ruben. And also I felt like the card just kind of sucked. It was very underwhelming. So it was the kind of the opposite of all my other cards on the rest of my list. And that is Dramatic Finale. This is a hybrid enchantment for Orzhov mana. And it says, creature tokens you control get +1/+1 whenever one or more non-token creatures you control die. Create a 2/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying. This ability triggers only once per turn. This is not dramatic. It is not a finale. It's a win more card or a do nothing card. And it's very, very upsetting that I want this card to be so good and it really does nothing.
I tried. I tried so hard. I swear to God, I've built the Dramatic Finale deck at least 2 or 3 different ways. You want to be the token deck because it pumps the tokens, but you can't be all tokens because it doesn't do anything if you don't have those tokens out. Otherwise, the format to do nothing. So it's really difficult and frustrating. This card is weirdly frustrating. I 100% agree.
It reads like a bomb in limited too, and it just does nothing. I mean, sometimes it'll do a bunch of stuff, but you're like way ahead anyway, so it's completely irrelevant. And it's supposed to be a dramatic finale. It's just a fizzle. I'm so sad about it.
And also, it's supposed to be a finale. Like that signals to me a sorcery. The word, the title "dramatic finale" is a sorcery to me. This is an enchantment, so it's not so much an event as it is a thing that just keeps happening. So this finale is happening forever, like witches bother. That's just a weird another anachronism among anachronisms.
Well, if there is anything that Wizards has like clung on to for the last year, it is this ability triggers only once each turn. And you don't always need it. I'm not sure I would have been very scared of this card if it said something else. Like, there's going to be some dumb combo in Commander that makes 1 million tokens if that exists, but there's already 1 million combos in Commander that make 1 million tokens. Like, make the card better, at least in some constructed formats. A little. So for my number 10, this is a card that I've just seen too much of. I'm just sick of it. I get and I understand something will be the best. Something has to be the best. It's how Magic works. But when you see the same plays over and over and over, you got to be careful because you can have a cat oven situation. And I'm not saying we have a cat oven situation, but what I'm saying is we have an itwitch lessons situation, and it's always itwitch. And when it dies, you learn, and it's just turn 1 itwitch. I have been turn 1 itwitch, turn 2 itwitch. And I just hate the world. It's just so annoying. And you have to deal with them and they get card advantage off of it. Stupid freaking bat. Listen, itwitch is 1 black mana for an uncommon from Strixhaven School of Mages. It is a creature I-bat, because of course it is. It has flying, and when it dies, you learn. You may reveal a lesson card you own from outside the game and put it into your hand, or discard a card to draw a card. It's just a lot, all right? It's just a lot.
It's not even a tier 1 deck.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. And alchemy. That's right.
Okay.
I went alchemy. I went full alchemy on y'all. In alchemy, this is one of the best. Mono Black is one of the best decks in alchemy. And it's this stupid value card. It's good early. It's good late. And thank God, a bunch of the removal spells do say exile this instead of, put it in the graveyard. I appreciate that. But all of them.
Your obsession with itwitch is just bizarre.
It is very.
It's fine.
Misplaced, I think.
Okay. Again,
itwitch, the new powerhouse of the format.
Right.
Said no one ever except for Evan.
It's not
how about this? I get that it can be on your worst cards list because it specifically sticks in your craw.
My craw has been stuck with a bat with 1 eye. All right, let's move on here to number 9. Ruben, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is one of 2 hires that I have that are on somebody else's list.
Well, okay then. Nerd Girl, what's your number 9?
All right, so now we're getting to the meat of my top 10 list, and that is things that I think make for bad gameplay, either ruined format or removes interaction, or just creates no fun for the game states. And for my number 9, I went ahead and put in Unnatural Growth. I think this is one that will surprise most people. For colorless, green, 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 you get an enchantment. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. This is the card that comes down, immediately impacts the board state, and completely negates any work you have done for any kind of card advantage. They have 2 dudes, and okay, you win now. Like, I literally don't have enchantment removal, and there's nothing you can do about it. It turns all of your 2/2 cat tokens into lethal threats, and there's just no interaction that makes this card fun. And you don't even get to like attack them back because it's on your turn too. This is awful gameplay, and I hate it.
It was that last part that you said was that what got me. Like, I was playing against them. I'm like, okay, on their turn, they get the wait, on my turn, they also get the bonus? Mm-hmm. Oh my God. And I died because I was like, I can handle it, when it's their way, not when it's both ways. Then you
get into these points where like you're playing a mirror match, and it's whoever gets this card first wins. And I think that is awful magic.
It's not great.
Yeah. It reads really Timmy. It reads really like win more, not offensive. But I have played against this card a couple times, and it is either a complete blowout or totally irrelevant, neither of which is interesting gameplay. So 100%.
Yeah, this card is like $6 to $8.50 ish, depending on what version you're getting. And this is the type of card I think could be very expensive just because of it doubles things. And it doubles all the things. And it doubles every single turn, which can matter. And this card is crazy, crazy good. For my number 9, speaking of crazy, crazy good, that unarguably, maybe, who knows, ruining formats. There's this weird sort of like questions that kind of float over Wizards' way, which is like, did you really mean to do everything you did with Modern Horizons 2? Did you do all the things you were trying to accomplish? Because Murktide Regent is a mythic, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't know if I'd call this anywhere close to fair. It's absolutely ridiculous, quite frankly. Currently, 15 plus, 16 plus dollars, and it goes up from there. Murktide Regent is a 2 blue, 5 generic mana mythic dragon. It is a 3/3 with Delve, which means each card you exile from your graveyard while casting this spell pays for 1 generic mana. It has flying. It enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter for each instant and sorcery card exiled with it. Now, Legacy says hello, and that means this could be up to a 2 mana 8/8 flyer. Whenever an instant or sorcery card leaves your graveyard, which means if you just happen to play another one, for example, you put a +1/+1 counter on Murktide Regent too.
Yeah.
Because why not? Okay.
Yeah.
What?
I thought that this card was Tombstalker.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out Tombstalker is very good when it's an 8/8 that can also get bigger and can also be removed to Force of Will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this card is a mistake, and it's the Modern Horizons 2 tribal deck is ruining Legacy. So here we are.
I mean, they pushed it as hard as they possibly could. As we move on here to number 8. Ruben, what's your number 8?
So we're still on the train. And there is a bunch of stuff in the Dungeons and Dragons set, in the Adventures of the Forgotten Realms set, that I feel like if you give it the name, it has to do something epic. It needs to be good. It needs to not just be good, it needs to be legendary. It's not just legendary, it needs to be all-time epic. And I feel like they failed on this trio of cards, one of which was higher, and then I've got this one and then my next one. And this one is, I was just so disappointed in the failure to encapture what the deck of many things means in the lore, in the game, in gameplay. It was just kind of boring and stayed. I mean, it's not even good. So you can't even lean on that. So anyway, the deck of many things is 5 generic mana for a legendary artifact that has an activated ability. Pay 2 generic and tap. Roll a 20-sided die and subtract the number of cards in your hand. If the result is 0 or less, discard your hand. If you roll a 1 through 9, you return a card at random from your graveyard to your hand. If you roll a 10 through 19, you draw 2 cards. And if you roll a 20, you put a creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. When that creature dies, its owner loses the game. So if I take a creature out of your graveyard and then I sacrifice it, you lose, which is cool. Like, it's cool that it says that you get to win the game in a weird way when you roll a natural 20, but I mean, it does nothing even remotely close to what the deck of many things does in Dungeons and Dragons. It doesn't elicit that sort of feeling or fear or awe.
This is your mythic, right? This is why. Okay. All right. So this was this honest God game state, right? I had the deck of many things, which is kind of neat. In many ways, you could imagine it as a really terrible random regrowth for 7 mana, or a terrible divination for 7 mana. Okay, whatever. Well, I had the deck of many things out, and my opponent had played something with haste or whatever and attacked me. And I was like, this, all I got is to roll a nat 20 on the deck of many things, which I did, and I'm flipping out, at which point I'm like, wait, I just drew 2 cards. What happened? Because I had cards in my hand and it subtracted from the 20 I got. So yes. I lost. So the whole reason I can imagine that 20 is there, your 5% chance, and it didn't do anything. Why did it subtract the number of cards in your hand to start with? Why can't it just roll a d20? Was it really that overpowered? Was it really that hardcore up in the... Seriously? I just can't. This card just sucked in weird, stupid ways.
The subtraction was weird because it was the only card that had a subtraction sort of mechanic. I wouldn't have minded the subtraction mechanic being separate from the actual bracket of die rolls. So your natural 20 still gives you the bonus,
right? But
you actually had subtract 2. So that way, if you, for whatever reason, were below 0, then you would also discard your hand. I think that would be cool. And I think a big miss with cards like this, and I think that because they did it on this card, shows that they could have done it. They gave us things like the fairy and a couple other things that let you roll additional times. But I really think that they missed the mark by not giving us rolling modifiers, because that's a huge part of D&D. So instead of a double roll, I would have liked those fairies to give me an additional +1/+1. And I think that I agree that this card wasn't very exciting. I like it because it was good and limited, but it definitely misses the mark for constructive gameplay.
I mean, it's a mythic artifact that lets you draw 2 cards half the time. So
it's great and limited.
Yeah, it's great and limited.
Right, but when it failed me in limited because I got its coolest mode and its coolest mode did nothing.
Exactly. I actually think that that argument of this being the only card that can take away a natural 20 from itself is another argument for this being on my worst list.
This card did not need to suck this bad. It really didn't.
I had an opposite thing where I top decked a land and just rolled it, not thinking there would be any way I would ever roll a 1. Had to discard. I was just like, what the? So, like, if I had just played the land, there's no way I fail, right? But I just
can't. I don't know. This card was just gigantically disappointing. Nerd Girl, what's number 8?
All right, so my number 8 is going to be the one I'm going to get the most grief for. Yes, YouTube comments, I understand. I hate cards that are too easy, that give little interaction, that are too easily accessible, that make it so deck building is dumb. And also, I hate anything that helps control. So my number, what are we on? 9, 8? My number 8 is Mascot Exhibition.
Oh, speaking of itwitches, ladies and gentlemen.
Mascot Exhibition is a 7 mana sorcery lesson. Create a 2/1 white inkling, a creature token with flying, a 3/2 red white spirit token, and a 4/4 blue red elemental creature token. So this is brought in by bouncing cards and other things. It makes it so that way control decks no longer need to actually put any dedicated spaces into their deck to actually win the game, which I hate.
Yeah.
They're annoying enough as it is. We don't need to give them an additional 4 to 8 card slots to then beat me with their stupid bouncing controlling spells that just give them free win conditions. It's aggravating and I hate it.
I would almost argue that Divide by Zero, I think I hate a little bit more than this card, because Divide by Zero just does so many stupid things for that control deck specifically.
I don't think it would be as bad if they didn't have the lessons so powerful, right?
And
because the first one gets their mana to then get the second one, which lets them play this thing. And I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, they wanted something at the top of the chain. If something has to be at that top and something has to be the best yada yada, and it's your mythic and you like to sell, packs of magic cards.
Yeah.
Okay, it's whatever. It's fine.
I am of the opinion, I'm going to take the limited angle here for once, which is I think that Strixhaven is as close to a perfect limited environment as we got this year. It was my favorite limited environment of the year.
Sure.
And it wasn't close for me. And I think the only stain on it was Mascot Exhibition. I think that if Mascot Exhibition wasn't around, the other lessons were perfectly reasonable and limited. And as soon as you had Mascot Exhibition in a deck, your win percentage went way through the roof and it was colorless. So it went in every possible deck.
Yeah, but in limited, the lessons were a little bit more restricted. It is 7 mana. So by then, oftentimes the games are decided. I actually hated this way less in limited because anytime you open a mythic bomb that's good, your win percentage is going to go up.
Right.
So I don't know that was necessarily a determining factor for me in limited. I thought it was fine.
I thought it was super, for me, they got Mascot Exhibition. I'm like, congratulations, you win the game. Because it's rare you're going to win through that. But also, no, the reason this card is only $1.50 to $2 is because you can't play lessons/learning in Commander the way that you can in Standard or any other constructed format. This card would be $1 million if you could play lessons in Commander the way you can play lessons in Standard. So that's one small thing for it, is that if you care about Standard, well, they did you a solid by keeping this thing out of Commander.
Also, you just need less of them, right? Whereas if this was a bomb that would go in your deck, you would need 4 versus a lesson where you only need 1 or 2 because you don't want to take up all the spots in your sideboard slots.
Yeah. So for my number 8, this is going through Ruben's period, and it might be his number 9. You never know. This is a card that's just embarrassingly crappy. It's unfortunate. It makes me sad reading it. And in particular, it wants to be cute. It wants to call back to something. But when you do a callback, and the way that you do the callback, it better be, when you're calling back to Library of Alexandria, you better be damn skippy fantastic. And the biblioplex is literally the opposite of that. This card is absolutely terrible. It's a rare land from Strixhaven. It taps to add a wingding. That's a colorless mana. For 2 generic mana, tap : look at the top card of your library. All right, first thing you got to do, if it's an instant or sorcery card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put the card into your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. Activate only if you have exactly 7 or 0 cards in hand. I don't know if they remove that last sentence and anybody would be playing with this. Anybody. Maybe the control decks will play 1 or 2 of this. Maybe. But with that last line, it's basically completely useless. And I haven't seen anyone use it at all, care, say anything about it. It just looks like complete trash.
Definitely a whiff on the flavor. When they make these callbacks, I think that the cards should be playable.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is going to be a certain amount of X junk rares that just happen in every format. So
this one just they were talking about a library, but they wanted to be exclusive somehow, but that's not really in the art. That's not in the story that I know of. So thematically, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Calling back to Library of Alexandria doesn't make a lot of sense because library just lets you draw a card. This puts a far greater constriction. If this said instant sorcery or land, for example, give me a bit of more breadth of card choice, maybe we can talk. But when, it's just instants or sorceries, it's not going to work.
Yeah, this one was a whiff, unfortunately. I mean, I've played it in a couple decks.
Did it do anything?
No, not really.
Ever.
I mean, it's a mana sink when you have 10 mana, right? And you're already hellbent, right? It's a thing to do with your mana, but so are the common scry lands. You know what I mean? So this is not that much better than a Quandrix campus to warrant a rare slot.
Right. I just, I like when they call back to really good cards, I want the cards to be good. I want to have that connection and not go, wow, that card was amazing. And this card is just literally an embarrassing shadow of what the other one did. That sucks. All right, let's move on here to number 7. Ruben, what's number 7?
All right. When you are the most terrifying monster in the history of Dungeons and or Dragons, you'd better be a acceptably fine magic card. The Tarasque is simply not. The Tarasque is such a disappointment on so many different levels. It just makes me sad to even look at the Tarasque. The Tarasque is 6 generic green for a legendary creature dinosaur, mythic, that's a 10/10. The Tarasque has haste and ward 10 as long as it was cast. Whenever the Tarasque attacks, it fights target creature defending player controls. I don't know why we felt it was necessary with our current layout of what this card is to give it the as long as it was cast parenthetical. Like, I don't think it's that bad if we reanimate this on turn 4 compared to reanimating Ulamog.
I mean,
right? Like what's the problem here?
I could see you could say, well, you know, it only gets haste if you cast it from your hand, but who cares if it has ward 10 or not? Whatever. It's a big fat idiot, and he fights things. Okay, who cares? I don't know. From even just, you know, speaking to you about it a little bit, like, this creature should have been absolutely insane. This creature should have been like
this creature should
first of all, like, it's
this creature should have been a 20/20.
Right.
I do not understand how you make a Dungeons and Dragons set that has the Tarasque in it, and you don't make the Tarasque have 20 power and 20 toughness. Like, that is just mind-boggling to me.
I'm going to have to disagree here. Like, I am a D&D dork as well, but I am not nearly as dorky as you, so I understand how you can be upset. But, like, I've played a lot of D&D. I see this creature, and it's as good as it needs to be for Magic. Like, this creature is giant. If you play it, it wins games. It, like, 2-for-1s them immediately. They can't block it. An 11/11 that they literally cannot target is powerful enough in a limited format for sure. To me, it does embody what D&D did. If you want it to just come down and snap win the game, then, like, that also makes for bad Magic.
Was this even playable in limited? It was 9 mana.
No, I played it all the time and it was great.
Seriously? Okay. I mean, that format was pretty slow.
It also doesn't have trample, which blows my mind.
Yeah, but it seems weird that a 1/1 could, like, stop the Tarasque,
right? I would have loved the Tarasque to have been a 20/20 for, let's say, 17 mana. Like, who cares? Doesn't really matter.
$1 million.
Doesn't matter what the casting cost is.
So you want it to be worse but look bigger?
Yes.
Okay.
Honestly, based on sort of like the descriptions of it and how it, like, you know, destroyed cities and towns and stuff, like, if you had to sacrifice lands to play it, I think it would make sense, and that it, you know, it destroys the lands as it's, like, coming through. Again, something thematic in this big scary monster.
The creature itself is okay. I mean, it's very similar to King Crush in Hearthstone. And I feel like they were just like, we want to make King Crush in Magic, but didn't really take into account the lore of the Tarasque. They just were like, ooh, big giant dinosaur, as opposed to the Tarasque. Like, it's just like, I enjoy, I'm going to take you on a little bit of a field trip here. You're going to have to live with me for a second. You know, when Timothy Dalton was James Bond for 2 movies in the 70s?
Okay.
He was okay. He was fine. They were good movies, but he wasn't Bond, right? They were good spy movies, but Timothy Dalton just isn't Bond. This is a fine, big, giant, mythic dinosaur, but this isn't the Tarasque.
I want the Sean Connery version, please.
Disagree.
Look, when this thing is
get in the comments
and explain as, like, the big scary monster of all big scary monsters, and 2 1/1 soldiers can just hop right in front of it and save the day, like, I don't know, man. That's
I mean, it comes down, it immediately kills a creature. Then they can't really block it because it's big enough, and then they can't really, like, target it to remove it. It's gonna win games of Magic.
And then the little scorpion just goes and kills him. Oh, it's fine. It's fine. All right. Anyway, Nerd Girl, what's your number 7?
So my number 7 is one of the newer cards. Actually, I think one of the newest cards to make my list, and that is because I really hate the gameplay. I don't know if it's seeing any play. I don't think it is in any of the, like, more Eternal formats, and honestly, not a ton in Constructed either. But in Limited, this is just awful. The format's not super fast. So when they get this card, there is no interaction to be had. And in a best of one format, which, Arena really pushes, then there's just no gameplay here. And that is Faithbound Judge. Faithbound Judge is a 3-mana colorless white for a 4/4 spirit soldier with defending, flying, and vigilance at the beginning of your upkeep. If Faithbound Judge has 2 or fewer counters on it, put a counter. As long as Faithbound Judge has 3 or more counters on it, it can attack as though it didn't have defender. And then for 7 mana, you can disturb it and you can just pitch it into your graveyard with a ton of other things like bloods or whatever. And then you can, for 7 mana, enchant a player at the beginning of your upkeep, put a counter on Sinister Judgment, which is what the other side is called. And then once it gets 3 counters, your opponent loses the game. That's it. So if you don't have enchantment removal main deck in best of one, you literally just lose. GG, you have a 2-turn clock to beat your opponent. If you can't do it, game over, no interaction, awful magic.
It's not great. Now, I have lost while waiting for them to die from the judgment counters or whatever. But yeah, a large time it was like, oh, nope, scoop, the end. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, that's pretty bad for best of one.
Yeah, it's not great. But again, 7 mana is a lot of mana. 7 mana, arguably, you literally skip your entire turn.
Right.
So there's some drawbacks. I think it read a lot scarier than it ended up playing a little bit, but in a limited environment, that's just like cranked like way higher.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, is this that much worse / better than Approach of the Second Sun, which I'll admit is also kind of miserable to play against?
It's pretty miserable.
Yeah. So that would have made my list too, probably, if it was newer. Like if you have no way of interacting with it and like your gameplay really doesn't matter if they do the thing, then I think that is just not fun Magic.
Fair point.
My number 7 is probably my most the worst command ever made. I hate this card. Sucks. It sucks. I get that the commands have to do a bunch, right? They're doing 4 freaking things. I understand you're not going to get a ton of sway in that, but just all of the words and the numbers on Witherbloom command make me sad, and I hate it, and it's a sorcery, and I don't know why. It's a black and a green for rare sorcery from Strixhaven. You choose 2. Target player mills 3 cards, then you return a land card from your graveyard to your hand, so it's crappy mulch. Destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less, so it's a really crappy abrupt decay. Target creature gets -3, -1, because no thing ever does that, and who cares? So now it's like a weird limited trick. And then target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, which would have been fine, except it's sorcery speed, so who cares? Like, what the hell is going on with this card? Nothing about it appeals to me in any fashion. There's weird commands that do some weird things, but arguably usually have 2 to 3 like good solid modes. This thing has half a mode that I care about. It's just meh.
Yeah, when the new commands came out, we looked at the 2 mana ones and we're like, these are probably we can look at these, but it turns out the good part about a command is that it's instant speed, right? Prismari command and Quandrix command turned out to be the good ones.
Right.
Witherbloom command is real bad.
It's just
and it would probably be fine if it were an instant.
It hasn't been okay.
-3, -1 is irrelevant when it's a sorcery. Speed. There's I don't understand why those numbers exist. The first 2 abilities are fine on a sorcery if you gave us a reasonable other 2 modes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, this was like tied for worst, in limited formats for sure. But the other one, which I think was Silverquill command, had more upside. Like you could just like aggro someone out and get them with like a 3/3 flyer and get a thing back or whatever. Right. But it was like pretty low impactful in the average game. And this one just doesn't have the same ceiling.
When I was like -3, -1, I'm like, oh, it's a combat. Oh my God, it's a sorcery.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Just none of this was just like, you have to make this a sorcery. Seriously, guys, things could go wrong. Like, okay.
No, I don't see what about this would be horrific as an instant. I think this would be a fine
I
instant.
think it'd be a fine answer. I certainly don't think it would be my number 7 if it were.
Right.
Let's move on here to number 6. Ruben, what's your number 6?
Speaking of disappointing 2-mana cards, we hemmed and we hawed and we were so nervous about Void Mirror when they were previewing it, and then it did nothing. And you know, there's Null Rod, which does nothing, but this doesn't do anything, which is different. Void Mirror is 2 generic mana for a rare artifact from Modern Horizons 2, one of the rare misses. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no colored mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. Turns out this card is no Rest in Peace. Turns out this card is no Chalice of the Void. This card is not the terror that we originally thought that it might be.
It reads good.
It reads good.
It reads strong.
It plays terrible.
Plays crap. Like, you know, this is one of those things, like, you literally can't even play the second copy in case they disenchant the other one because it counters the second copy of itself. Okay.
Yeah.
This was like, Tron decks are doomed. This is the end. GG,
the
Tron.
end of Affinity. Yeah.
Yep, Affinity's gone. No.
Nope.
Turns out they play colored spells too. Oops. Nerd Girl, what's number 6?
So, okay. So we're going back to, I promise this is the last time I will just be salty about a card that probably hasn't earned its spot on my list, but I hate it anyway.
You talk about as many eye twitches as you want.
A man has crawls, all right? Things are stuck in them.
So my number 6 is Hall of the Storm Giants. This land, if you control 2 or fewer lands, it comes into the battlefield tapped. It taps for a blue mana. And for 6 mana, you get a 7/7 blue giant creature with ward 3. It turns into, is still a land, and then goes back to being an untargetable nonsense card. Again, I don't understand why we're making control decks not need to put physical win conditions in their deck. Like, I know this is in the deck, but it takes the place of a land, so that doesn't take up any actual spots. Like, I do want you to have to draw a thing to kill me.
Right.
Well,
And
they
this
did.
is
They drew a
super
land
aggravating. No.
with
It's the land,
ward.
and you're just sitting there staring at it for like 17 cards while they go Wrath, 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 Wrath. Okay, if they don't have a 5th Wrath, we're good. Oh, they did. Great. Now they're going to kill me with a land. And it's so infuriating, and I just cannot deal with it. Stupid control players. I hate them.
Field of Ruin just exists because this card exists, and
Well, I mean,
it needs to exist because this card
I think
exists.
this card is fair. I would rather die to a Hall of Storm Giants than to, let's say, a single Inkmoth Nexus. You know what I mean? Like, among lands that kill you, at least this one puts you out of your misery relatively quick once you start activating it.
Yeah, no, that's true. Like I said,
the
I don't think this card's actually bad. I just want them to have to put a slot in the deck.
Sure.
Oh,
but
no.
we haven't, but control players haven't had to do that since Mishra's Factory. People haven't had to, you know, lands have been win conditions since time immemorial. It just so happens that this one is an all-star among all-stars of them because it protects itself and it ends games so fast.
Yeah, I would love to have a Mutavault Mishra's Factory back in standard. That would be fantastic for me. I thought that was great. I mean, good in control, it's good in aggro. This is the type of card that, you know, it wins you the game. Like, you do everything you got to do. You Wrath, you do the thing, you Planeswalker, you stuff and whatever. And then when all the pizzazz is over, the board is clear, and you go, activate my Hall and kill you. And that's just how it goes. Because they wanted it that way? Question mark.
Ew.
It's okay. Well, look, that's not necessarily a blue card, but let me tell you, my number 6 is 100% a blue card. I clearly misspelled it as well. All right, here we go. This card, Lord God, this thing has a lot of freaking words on it, which is another problem we have these days with Magic, which is there's way too many words on cards. This one is so many words. Not only is it a ton of words, it's kind of confusing. It's not that great. And by the time it actually does anything, you're probably either dead, you don't care. It's been a million turns in Commander and stuff has happened. Kasmina, God of the Voyage, does something, a lot of somethings that you later have to remember as triggers on those somethings. Or you could play it as a really terrible other half that's just bad and gross and may even read okay, but absolutely plays like crap. Kasmina, God of the Voyage, is a blue and 2 generic mana for a 2/4 rare legendary god. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile Kasmina. If you do, it gains, quote, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. If Kasmina is exiled, you may put a voyage counter on it. And if you don't, return Kasmina to the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it and draw X cards, where X is the number of voyage counters on it. And we ain't even done. We turn it over to the Omen Keel. It's a blue and generic mana for a legendary artifact vehicle. Whenever a vehicle you control deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles that many cards from the top of their library. You may play lands from among those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and it has crew of 1. It's terrible on both sides. It's just absolute garbage. It's like, if by the time Kasmina does things, like literally, I think, like for me, it was like 2 counters has to be the minimum for this thing to feel like it actually has some sort of impact. Because at that point, it's a 4/6 that drew you 2 cards. Because almost any stat before that, or anything just playing it as a 3 mana 2/4, feels terrible. And then it wants you to just get rid of the from the battlefield, completely remove it so it can't help you. And then you might play land or might draw a land to maybe put a counter on it. So maybe next upkeep, and I'm flipping the table already. I'm just over it. Yeah. This card is dumb and I don't like it.
I mean, honestly, for a card to not be very exciting and limited, it has to be pretty stinking bad. And that is exactly what this card is. I remember doing the set review and I was just very unimpressed by it. And I was like passing it, pack 1, pick 1. And it's like the god of the color. And I'm like, like, I don't really understand why this card was such a miss. And both sides sound okay. They sound like card advantage, but it is way too slow an engine for it to be relevant in any way. I ran it in my blue decks, but it was like, oh, I happen to get a 4th pick, pack 3 god. Great. I'll put it in the deck. It's not cuttable, but it's definitely not something I was interested in actively seeking out.
Yeah. And it's also just, it's got the, was it Odric? Maybe Odric's on somebody's list too, where it's just like, this is a whole lot of words to say nothing.
0.
Right? Like, this is literally a 2/4 for 3.
Yes. It's
in most cases.
In most cases.
Like, that's it. Like, that's all it is it's a stone wall for your opponent's aggro creatures.
Because like, it has to live through their entire turn, and then you have to exile it, and then you have to play a land, and it might do something if you're not dead by the time your next upkeep comes around, so you can bring it back and play. Oh my god. And the other, I feel like what happened was they said something like, you know what, this card feels like pretty low powered. You know what we're going to do? We're going to let it say whenever a vehicle you control deals combat damage. All right, guys, high five. We're going to lunch. We did this one right. Oh my god. Let's move on here to number 5. Ruben, what's number 5?
My number 5 is the second higher that's on somebody else's list.
Very nice. Nerd Girl, what's number 5?
My first of 3 hires.
Oh, I get to take this one. I love this one. And by love this one, I mean I really hate this one. I just okay, look. I feel like, there's a magic card and everybody can have their favorite magic card. And there's so many times where the magic card that you don't like the most is the reason that somebody's playing magic. And, you don't like this Teferi. Well, that Teferi is why that person made that deck and is playing magic right now. Who is Averbruck Caretaker for? Who is it for? What did you do? Who hurt you? Why do you do this? Have you played Magic the Gathering? Do you understand what this card does? Have you played against this card? Because it's stupid and it's dumb and I hate it and you can't get rid of it. Oh my god. Averbruck Caretaker is 2 green, 4 generic mana for a mythic human werewolf from Crimson Vow. It has hexproof because screw you, that's why. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control, and oh yes, it has Daybound, because when it flips over, it's a 6/6 hexproof. Yes, hexproof. Other permanents you control have hexproof. Oh my god. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. This thing is an 8/8 hexproof. You can't target nothing with nothing. Oh my god, I hate this card. I hate it. I just hate it.
It sounds like good interactive Magic gameplay to me. I don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
No, this card is atrocious. When I saw this during the limited set review, I was like, what the heck is this? Why is this a thing? And I actually lost my decathlon, my first run in the decathlon recently for the Crimson Vow one, in the finals, I was like X2 or X1 or whatever. Yeah, you had to go 5 or 2 losses.
5-2,
so yeah, I was like, so I was 4-1 and someone just played this and I was just like, okay, all right, I guess we're re-rolling, guys. Like, there's nothing you can do. That card is just so dumb.
I've never beat it.
I thought we had a gentle people's agreement that we had Ward to replace Hexproof.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just print Avabruck Caretaker like we just didn't invent Ward. Like we just don't have access to Ward as a very silly.
Ward mana, Ward life, Ward make me discard cards, Ward,
Ward
maybe name my first
10.
one something. Don't
do whatever.
Make me name Ward, take my firstborn.
You can have it. Just stop it. Making all of your other permanents hexproof. You are seriously messed up, Wizards. Why would you put that word? Why would you put that sentence on a Magic card? It's disgusting.
I think the kind of middle ground, which I actually didn't mind and was kind of beatable, was the snake from the previous set, where untapped creatures had hexproof and you could like untap, and it itself was targetable. So you like, okay, I have a goal, kill the thing.
Right.
Yeah, and it prevented them from attacking with it because they needed to untap and protect their other creatures. But like, this is also just an 8/8 beater that you can't also deal with. So it's just
you
annoying.
Can't target.
Yeah.
Like if it gave other stuff hexproof and not itself, right? It's like it's giving the other bonus and it's taking the bonus away from itself. I just, oh God. All right, moving on here. Number 4. Ruben, what you got?
So I guess this might be unpopular opinion time, but this is a great card. I love this. I love playing this card. I think this card adds a ton to Magic the Gathering. And I am sick of it. I don't want to see it anymore. And I'm going to have to live with it for the foreseeable future. And it's Faceless Haven.
Oh.
I am done with Faceless Haven.
They rebalanced it for you?
No, thank you. No, thank you. It's a rare from Kaldheim. It's a snow land that taps for a wingding, and it says snow, 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 : it becomes a 4/3 creature with vigilance and all creature types until the end of the turn. It's still a land. Faceless Haven has the same problem that all colorless lands have, which is that if they're good, they go in everything. And this goes in everything. This is another Mutavault. This is another Mishra's Factory, right? And they needed to give aggro something. But the problem is that they put it on a snow land, and that means that your mana bases are still restricted. They're just restricted in a different way, which I think is, in theory is clever. But the problem is that we have now homogenized mana bases to the point where you're a Faceless Haven deck or you're playing 2 colors.
Yeah, I actually think that this card is part of the reason why white and green are as good as they are, because they're so resistant to the board clears from control, because they could just clean up with Faceless Haven. And the card itself is good enough to mop up the rest of the game pretty easy. And then it's not targetable on, your opponent's turn, so they can't untap and deal with it. They can't wrath it. They can't do anything. So, I mean, I agree that this made mana bases way restricted because you have to have snowland. There's no ETB dual snows, right? So you're basically a monocolored deck, which is theoretically lower power level as a whole. But like, this card is just so good that they had to nerf it, which I think is very interesting.
I was going to say, they got the snow duels or whatever they enter the battlefield tab, but like I've played this in 2 color decks with the snowlands because it's just that good. I was not surprised at all that this was in the first wave of alchemy changes of like, this card is very good. We recognize it's super good. Probably didn't need that extra point of power. Like 3/3 would have still been very good, very powerful.
It's not even that it's good. It's that it's ubiquitous. It's that it's everywhere. And I don't know how you fix that other than you make it worse.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the giant from Eldraine, right? Where it's not like people are like, ban this card. It's about it being so good that it's everywhere. And that is boring. And I think that's a huge problem.
And that's what, and that's the thing I made a point about alchemy when we talked about it, which was, because alchemy exists, there is no longer the best, like this is the best mono green deck you can build. It just doesn't exist. There's flavors. And I appreciate that, And so there are different flavors of Faceless Haven decks that are out there in alchemy, because it's not just like obviously clearly 4 of in a snow deck, the end. And I like that. I think that's cool. Nerd Girl, what's number 4?
All right, so my number 4 is a card that has been kind of banned in like some formats and then brought back because like the middle ground format. And this is I'm sure a card that Ruben will have something to say on, because it starts with the word the, and we have the Book of Exalted Deeds.
Nice.
This 3 mana white legendary artifact says at the beginning of your end step, if you gained 3 or more life, create a 3/3 white angel token with flying. And you can also pay 3 mana, tap it, exile the book, put an enlightened counter on target angel. It gains, you can't lose the game, and your opponents can't win the game. Activate only as a sorcery. I would like to go back 1 number here and just let you guys know that Faceless Haven is all creature types. So you stick this on your Faceless Haven and you can no longer win the game. As long as you don't activate your Faceless Haven again, it's very unlikely that your opponent will be able to deal with this. And there was a time where nobody was running the Field of Ruins. So this was just like, okay, get the combo, win the game. No, nothing else you could do. And I've had best of 1 games go on for like an hour and a half or something like this. I did a charity event, the one where all the streamers did the No Hungry thing. And I did viewer submitted deck lists for the donations. And I started this. We had 1 account that Wizards gave all of the streamers, and we were relaying to Mythic. And I played this, and I ended up so far into my timer. It was like a 45-minute match. And then I wasn't done yet. I was so invested. Hoogland picked it up, same match, for another 30 or 40 minutes. No joke, because the opponent would not concede. And I was like, so invested.
Wow.
So then we all went and watched Hoogland finish that match until they eventually ran out of cards. It was awful.
Oh
and
my
nobody
God.
should like have to deal with this.
Yes, this is because Field of Ruin wasn't in until like Crimson Vow or Midnight Hunt or something, and they didn't they soft ban this for a while? Am I imagining that?
So they banned it in the format that was like pre-rotation.
The best of 1. That's what they did. The best of 1. Yeah. But not the best
This
of 3.
was my number 9.
Nice.
This, and I think that this and the Book of Vile Darkness were both disappointing for different reasons. This one also because it was horrendous for gameplay because of the Faceless Haven interaction. Also, based on how the ability is worded, the enlightened counter actually doesn't do anything. The creature gains the ability whether it has the enlightened counter on it or not, which I think is stupid. But yeah, it's like it gets an enlightened counter. It also gets this other ability. It doesn't need the enlightened counter. That's just upsetting.
Or just give it the ability, right?
Right, exactly. So for all of those reasons and more, the Book of Exalted Deeds is on my worst list and on your list as well.
Jim Davis submitted the deck list for a $25 donation, and then Hoogland and I proceeded to play that match between the 2 of us for an hour and a half.
Got his money's worth.
I was about to say, literally. And I can already hear the guy in development being like, Evan, how are they supposed to keep track of who they use the Book of Exalted Deeds on? I'm like, I don't know. Put the card under it because you're exiling the card to give it the ability. Yeah. Is that how Magic cards? Anyway, all right. Moving on here to my number 4. I hate this card. I hate it. I hate to see it. I don't like it. I don't like the words they put on it. I don't like how it works. And I sure as hell don't like it in a format with Lear. Hullbreaker Horror makes me sad. Hullbreaker Horror makes me want to throw things. Hullbreaker Horror feels like an unstoppable. I've never, ever, not once, now it's not even been freaking close. My opponent untaps with this creature. I have lost the game. That's it. The end. There is no sequel to this. There's no getting around it. This card is stupidly good. It does stupidly powerful things, and I hate it. And I don't care if it's 7 mana. It's still a lot. It hurts me. It's 2 blue. It's 5 generic mana. It's a rare Kraken horror. It's a horror, all right. It is a 7/8 with flash. So 7 mana, 7/8 flash. This spell can't be countered because of course not. Whenever you cast a spell, choose up to 1. Return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand, or return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So just do everything, okay? Do everything, or choose both and do everything all at once. I hate it. Thanks.
So this was my number 5.
Mhm.
It's not interactive gameplay, right? It turns every spell into a nonsense thing that just like, oh, I'm going to draw 5 cards, remove your threat, do this stuff, and then draw into whatever. It synergizes very well with the 3/4. Help me out here, guys. I'm bad with names. Lear, yeah. So like it works with Lear very well. It's an insane card that is beatable, but it eliminates interaction, which I find to be very not fun. I have managed to beat this a couple of times. I had the white flash cemetery creature in day 1 of Vegas GP for like the final round.
Oh, nice.
And they could bounce it, but I had enough mana to replay it twice and it has flash. So I was able to get in that way.
Nice.
That was the only way. Yesterday, I was playing a Crimson Vow draft and my opponent plays this and I'm like, oh, thank gosh. They tap out, I like murder it or whatever, and then take my turn. They untap, play another one in limited. I was like so mad. I've never been more mad. Like so few times do I have the answer to this card. And the one time I do, they have a second one. Like, what? It's livid.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely livid.
I do appreciate that this is a 7/8 that is a horror. So it is the thing that is in the ice in Awoken Horror, which I think is clever. But yeah, I mean, obviously this card is a miserable experience to play against.
I just, I get that you want like a really cool blue control finisher. I understand it, but damn, have you played against this card? Like I've won against this card, when they're tapped out or they have their one spell and I can just, I do everything I can to get it out. Right. But if they untap, it's over. Like there's nothing I can do. I'm going to lose. They're going to bounce everything, including my spells, because that doesn't counter them. Mm-hmm. So it makes Lear not even like matter at that point. Oh my God. All right, moving on here. Number 3, Ruben, what's number 3?
Hey, remember when they had to change the rules of Magic because they printed Valki, God of Lies? Like they just had to change how Magic functioned, and they had to say, no, you don't actually get to cascade into a 7-mana card. We have to rewrite an entire chapter of the rule book. Valki, God of Lies is just a lot. It's a generic end of black for a 2/1 god. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent reveals their hand. For each opponent, exile a creature card they revealed in that way until Valki leaves the battlefield. Then you can pay X and choose a creature card exiled with Valki, and Valki can become that creature.
Or X is converted mana cost.
We got that. It's a 2/1 Mesmeric Fiend kind of. The backside is Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter, 5 generic black-red legendary planeswalker Tibalt. As Tibalt enters the battlefield, you get an emblem with, you may play cards exiled with Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. Enters with 5 loyalty. +2, exile the top card of each player's library. -3, exile target artifact or creature. -8, exile all graveyards. Add red. So the reason why this is busted is because originally you could cast something like Violent Outburst or another 3-mana cascade into Valki, God of Lies, and then choose to play Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter. They have since not just clarified, but rewritten, I believe, this rule that says if an effect would put a double-faced card onto the battlefield, it enters with its front face up. And because previously you could choose either side. However, I believe you can still bring to light this because it's not Cascade. That's search your library and then put it into play. I could be mistaken on that. There are a couple. I think there's still a way or two to cheat Tibalt into play. In any case, this was miserable for a long time in a couple of formats until they changed the rules to Magic, and that's why it's on my list.
Wow.
Yeah, any card that makes you have to change the rules of Magic suck. This is interesting to make your list just because I didn't know it was such a terror, and it didn't really seem, the Tibalt side was kind of expensive and limited. It didn't really see a ton of play in like Constructed, and it seemed like a fine EDH card, certainly. But yeah, I mean, I'm news to me.
Well, yeah, this was a card, and there was this weird time. I feel like, and I understand it, right? Like wizards can't just knee jerk change everything because someone has a problem with it or whatever, or maybe this is a little busted in this one thing. But at the same time, there was like, wizards, this is wrong, right? This isn't cool. This is like boom bust on steroids. What are you talking about? You already changed the boom bust thing. Why would it not work on double face cards? But it didn't. Now it does. And pour one out for the poor programmers who had to go through all that code to figure it out and undo it.
Mm-hmm.
Nerd Girl, what's number 3?
My second of 3 hires.
Oh goodness, that means your number 2's higher.
It is.
Oh my gosh. Well, my number 3. Well, here you go. This is a Rubenesque number 3 for a reason.
Rubenesque is a term in Renaissance art already.
All right. What does it mean?
Okay.
But you don't. What does it mean? It means so Rubenesque art is typically voluptuous women because of the artist Rubens, who was a 1700s artist. So that's what Rubenesque means, or Rubenesque means. I am assuming that's not what this
card has no.
I'm gonna just say that all the time now. Every time I refer to you, doesn't matter.
There's no cleavage on this one. I'm sorry. But it is Rubenesque in a way that it is number 3 on my list. It costs 3 mana. It is a 3/3, and it does almost nothing. I absolutely cannot stand Odric Blood Cursed. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I'm glad that it's on your list.
Did they really just put, what was it, Woolly Mammoth or something? Something mammoth.
Trained Armadon.
Trained Armadon was one of the first ones back in Kamigawa. Odric Blood Cursed is a 3/3 for white, red, and a generic mana. It is a rare legendary vampire soldier. And when it enters the battlefield, you create X blood tokens, where X is the number of abilities from among flying, first strike, double strike, death touch, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, trample, and vigilance found among creatures you control. And of course, you have to count each ability only once because God forbid this thing make 2 tokens for 2 creatures with haste or something. This card is horrible. This card is a really painful to cast Trained Armadon. I know that blood tokens have been very good and powerful, particularly in commander formats where they push the crazy casual cards. And all more power to you. This card is crap. I can't stand it, and I'm sorry. It just feels like bad design.
Is part of the reason why Boros is so bad in this limited format is because I got lucky and got my bomb passed to me because it's a 2-color rare and other people can't play it. Doesn't matter because this is just the same as any of the green commons, which is just a 3/3 for 3. Now there are a fair amount of menace creatures and flying creatures in red and white, respectively there. So you can get a blood token, but like it's so rare and so hit or miss, and it's such a minor bonus for that like this should not be the Boros rare. And if it had first strike,
give it one of them.
We had the Rakdos Vampire in the previous set that had first strike, got you card advantage, did a bunch of stuff. I do not see why this cannot at least have first strike.
Yeah.
To give itself 1 counter.
Like, give it double strike. Like, just go. Are we afraid of this card with double strike? I'm not. I think it's kind of cool. Like, it gets a blood token and it's a 3/3 double strike for 3. Oh, snap, y'all. But, like, God, it's just terrible.
Or make it 2 mana like the Raptor from Ixalan. Sure. I mean, give us something. This is so bad. This is embarrassingly bad.
This is horrible. All right, let's move on here to our number 2. Unfortunately, Nerd Girls is higher on someone else's list. Ruben, what's your number 2?
So we talked a lot about this card last week, and we're going to have a little bit of overlap of our best cards of the year and our worst cards of the year because they're 2 sides of the same coin. This card, we've danced around colorless lands and saying how if they're good, oftentimes they're too good because they go in everything. Well, this card goes in everything. We've talked about how this card was rebalanced at the last second last week, which is always a mistake. And that they got too cute with they got too cute for their own britches with Urza's Saga. Urza's Saga is an enchantment land - Urza's Saga. Get it? You did it. You did the thing. It is a saga. Chapter 1 is it gains add a colorless. Chapter 2 is it gains pay 2 generic and tap, make a 0/0 colorless construct. With this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Chapter 3 is search your library for an artifact with mana cost of 0 or 1 generic mana, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. We flew too close to the sun, everybody. We just are too good. We are making too many, we make 2 3/3s for our land. We search our library for a witch's oven or what. It doesn't matter what we go get, honestly. It could be a 1-mana Darksteel relic and it wouldn't matter because it grows up the 2 things we made. This thing does everything. We can't ever go back to a pre-Urza Saga world in the formats in which Urza Saga is legal, which is modern and earlier. And that's unfortunate because Modern Horizons 2 has really ruined, I would say, a lot of formats, and Urza Saga is a big reason why.
I mean, you say ruined, I would argue changed. Now, changed good, changed bad. That's, I think, the argument. But the other thing I don't want to happen in particular with Urza Saga, and I hope it doesn't, which is one of the things that I thought was really, honest to God, refreshing. I've been doing this. I've been talking about Magic for a very long time, going on 15 plus years here. And I'm telling you, it's hard for Wizards to discuss mistakes. It is for a whole variety of reasons. Company PR, for their own ego, like for the game, the health of the game, you don't want to say something's wrong, you did something bad. And so for them to come out and be like, look, this was something we should have tested more. We didn't have enough time. It did go out the door, yada, yada. It's like, I love that honesty. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. There's mistakes in Magic. That's part of the game. We're literally used to it. And now Wizards can literally change it in Alchemy if they want for the new stuff. But keep that honesty, and I like the high power level of stuff. I like playing with overpowered toys, and it sucks that this one came out a little too hot, but I'd rather it come out too hot than just a dud and we've never spoken about it and it's a crappy rare that made Urza Saga look bad somehow. You know what I mean? I don't know, there's 2 worlds out there, and I think I'd rather have the overpowered version.
I think Urza Saga does need to be, something playable. We talked about this earlier with one of the other cards where if it's a dud, it feels really, really bad. Yeah. But I agree that this is something this Modern Horizons 2 set has some very interesting things. And I do think that they were kind of swinging for the fences for it, whether that was to move product or what. But the first Modern Horizons was such a hit that I am not surprised that we got some overpowered goodies in it, just because, it is a cash cow. They're going to make a lot of money on Modern Horizons cards.
Yeah, I do agree with both of you that I would rather Urza Saga be too good than not good enough. It is very cool. Don't get me wrong. This card is the coolest. It's really neat. The type line Urza Saga with the card name Urza Saga telling the story Urza Saga. That's great. Yeah. But there's got to be a way to have it be cool and also not broken.
Mr. Tarasque, really?
Mr. Tarasque. Well, let me tell you, you want to talk about something that was not cool and was broken and took until October to get out of our lives. I cannot tell you how many times I have just angrily concede, close program, don't play it for the rest of the day. If I play one more damn Tibalt's Trickery deck, I hate this stupid card. It's Nerd Girls number 3. It's Ruben's number 5. This card is just stupid. I hate it. Why did you do it this way? You could have done it so many different ways. You could have made the trickery interesting. You could have made the idea of what you're getting neat. Instead, you just say, look, play every overpowered, expensive crap you possibly can, roll a die, and maybe win the game. And my God, that is just miserable. And we put up with it for months before they finally got rid of it in Historic. They didn't take that long in Modern, but regardless, Tibalt's Trickery is a red and generic mana for a red instant. It counters target spell. You choose 1, 2, or 3 at random. Its controller mills that many cards, then exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card with a different name than that spell. They may cast that card without paying its mana cost, then they put the exiled cards on the bottom of their library in a random order. Now that all sounds weird and neat and cute and, kind of does dumb stuff until they gave you a card that does nothing but Cascade, which means they gave you the ultimate card to counter along with a Cascade trigger. Oh my God. This card's dumb. I just hated it. Hated it.
I have 2 complaints about this card. One, the London Mulligan rule. Like, they should not make cards like this if they are going to let you mull into the perfect hand. And you can do that with some consistency in Constructed with having 4x of every card. The other thing, I am the very first person, I will almost never take a shot at R&D because I know most of them, they're infinitely smarter than I am. I could definitely not do their job better than they could. Like, in any world, I have never once said anything awkward or like, oh, this, you did a bad job making this card. This card makes no sense because the design of this card is going to read one of two ways. It is a trash bulk rare, or it is going to do something completely stupid that you didn't mean it to do. There's no middle ground in a card that's formatted in this way. And I think that, why the heck did we make this? This is the very first time where I think R&D really stepped in it for no reason at all. Like, they weren't trying to make something cool like Urza's Saga. They were just trying to either make a dud or make something that just ruined the format. I don't know which.
Now, but to be clear, to give a nice last bit of context here before Ruben chimes in, Throes of Chaos is the card I was talking about from Modern Horizons. It's a red and 3 generic mana, so it's a 4 mana sorcery it's an uncommon sorcery that has Cascade and Retrace. So you can cast a card from your graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to paying its other costs. So you can just let it sit in your graveyard and then retrace it and counter with Tibalt's Trickery later. My God, it had literally both halves of the worst part of it. You got to counter the Cascade thing, the original spell, and get the Cascade trigger, or you get to cast it later. So whenever you draw your Tibalt's Trickery, you're basically guaranteed to get a spin of the wheel. I can't.
We also have a snakeskin worm, whatever, stone skin snake.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
The 0 costing whatever. Like, we can
Yeah.
do that in standard too. It's just absurd. Like, it's unnecessary.
It's gross.
Yeah, you've said everything that was needed to be said. I mean, it's just an inexcusable card, and it's well deserving. If I probably should have had this as my number one, but I think that we've crapped on this card enough to
beat it into the
ground. Exactly.
Well, another thing that Tibalt sucks at is also his Trickery. Got it. Let's move on here to our number one. Now, this would be, correct me if I'm wrong, this would be Ruben and I's number one is the same. Is that right?
Yeah.
We have a samesies. This will be Nerd Girl's number two. So before we talk about our number one, Nerd Girl, what's your number one?
So my number one is actually one that, like, I probably am not super qualified to talk on. So I'm hoping you guys will chime in a bit on this. And I know it was actually on your guys, I know it was on Ruben's best list. But from everything I've heard about this card, it has been an absolute terror. And I don't think that this makes for fun gameplay. It also is $1 bajillion, which leads me to believe it's super overpowered. And that is Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, a 1 mana 2/1 monkey pirate. That's a legendary creature. When Ragavan deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token and exile a top card of that player's library until end of turn. You may cast that, so it ramps you and gives you card advantage. And you can also dash it, which protects it and does a bunch of other things. And I know that this card is insanely powerful, and I've heard nothing but complaints about the format, including from Evan, where, like, if they are resolving this on curve, then you just die. You don't get a whole lot of interaction. I feel like that's really bad. And then the price point. So I'm hoping you guys will fill in some blanks.
Well, first of all, let me correct an error of mine when I was going on about how insane this card is. This card is absolutely insane. You don't get to cast the lands that you exile from it because you can't cast lands. Okay, you got me. But it gave you a treasure token, so that's kind of like giving you one anyway.
Still doing it. Yeah.
It's still insane. This is a card that is, and I put like a meme out on Twitter. You know, Wizards has two paths. Either you're tired of their crap and Deathrite Shaman, they go the way of the ban list, or you just say, look, this is a brainstorm type card. Live with it. Yep, we printed a $75+ mythic. Live with it. And if you don't like it, don't play the format, ?
Yeah. That makes for awfulness. Like, I feel like Ruben had like Epiphany or whatever. I was thinking, like, you could beat Epiphany. There are decks that are designed to do that. Right. But with a card like this where it costs 1 mana and with people telling me like it's unbeatable if they just have it in their opening hand, that makes for way less fun interactive Magic, I think.
I agree. And had this not been my number one last week, it would have been the number one this week. It's 100% should be near the top of one of these lists, if not both at the same time.
Yeah, I mean,
if you had told me that a monkey pirate would be the best creature ever printed, I might not have believed you. But here we are. This is another of these cards that's in the Modern Horizons 2 tribal deck with Murktide, Regent, and Urza Saga that, in my opinion, is ruining Legacy.
It's just a lot. And so here's the way I would break it down. All right. I would rather have a monkey pirate be the best, coolest thing you could do. A creature that swings in the red zone versus a 1-mana card that draws 3 cards as your pillar of the format. I'd rather just have a dorky 2/1. I mean, he does all the cool stuff.
Talking about Brainstorm.
I'm talking about Brainstorm.
Brainstorm is a common that's been printed a bunch.
You're right.
This is prohibitively expensive.
You're right.
And we have already got prohibitively expensive mana bases.
Right.
So.
Right, but see Brainstorm doesn't sell a pack like a Ragavan does. And if they were to ban Ragavan, let's put it this way. So Double Masters 2 or whatever's coming, right? If they ban Ragavan and Ragavan is in Double Masters 2, you've just cut yourself off of the knees in excitement, right?
Sure.
All the people who own Ragavans are already pissed because you banned the card, and all the people who are going to open them in the future are pissed because it used to be a really expensive card and now it's not, right? And again, this is to me is if you want your pillar to be Brainstorm or your pillar to be a monkey pirate, I'm team monkey pirate. That's where I'd go. So that said, let's move on here to our number 1.
We know everybody knows what our number 1 is.
Everybody knows. Like Wizards changed it. It's dumb. This is a card that I heard about late last year, and I was like, no, they wouldn't put more time walks in the format. Every time they've done that, it's backfired. And yet here's our number 1, Ruben. What'd they do?
Well, Alrund's Epiphany is our number 1, 5 generic mana, 5 blue, 7 mana total for a sorcery that makes 2 blue bird tokens with flying, and you take an extra turn after this one, and then you exile Alrund's Epiphany, and it has foretell, which means that during your turn, you may pay 2 generic mana and exile it from your hand face down, and you can cast it later in the turn, or on a later turn, for its foretell cost. This card, of course, is the Is It Epiphany. It's the Epiphany that's in those Epiphany decks. It is a time walk that does a number of things that make interacting. So when you have a time walk in and of itself isn't bad.
Isn't the worst thing in the world.
The problem with time walks is the ways that you can interact with it and the fact that they don't operate by themselves. This does operate by itself because it makes birds. So you play one, you play another, you play another. You've just got 6 birds in play, and then the game's over from nothing, as opposed to time walk, where you're not actually building up a board state.
Right.
One of the big ways to interact with time walks is discard spells. I almost put the card Check for Traps on my top 10 list because this is the only card I care about if I'm checking for traps. This and Saw It Coming.
Yeah. Right.
And I can't check for the traps that I care about because this is just in exile for 30 turns until you need it.
There was, what was that card from Future Sight that shuffled an exile card into its owner's?
Rift Sweeper.
I wish to God we had a Rift Sweeper. Look.
So Rift Sweeper only worked on face up cards in exile, unfortunately. God. Same with Pull from Eternity.
Of course.
Both of which would be great. My God, it would feel so good to Pull from Eternity in Alrund's Epiphany.
Yes.
But alas.
Well, I want Rift Sweeper 2.0 that lets us take a face down one as well. That would be great. But look, I think two things also came together, which is Wizards finally made good forks. Forks sucked for so long, and now you have Galvanic Iteration, which was just the best damn fork in Magic's history, and it coincided with a time walk that gave you dudes, and so this showed up on one of the first alchemy changes. Is it only gives you birds if you foretell it, and the foretell costs 7 because screw you, that's why. So it wasn't just 8 mana. You would win the game because you would Galvanic Iteration, Alrund's Epiphany. You had a whole turn to do whatever you wanted. They'd find another one, play another one, and then get your Galvanic Iteration, your extra mana you needed. So then you do the chain all over again. It's stupid. It was dumb. It was overpowered. It wasn't fun. This is one of those experiences that as a player was fun the first time I did it, and then I just felt bad. It just felt bad for my opponent. I'm like, I get 8 mana, you lose. There's not even a question. There's nothing you can do here, and that's just, is that great Magic?
And that's in addition to ramping it with dragons. That's in addition to deluging through, 2/4 of your deck or whatever to like get through and find them, which is just absurd.
Yeah. To give all that power, all that card draw, all that efficiency makes the very top of our worst cards of 2021. That was our top 10 worst cards of 2021. You can see them on the screen right now. If you review, take a look at my list, Nerd Girl's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 or to win $50 worth of anything at coolstuffinc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Nerd Girl.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Ruben.
We only roast the ones we love. We had a good year of Magic.
Solid year.
There were some strikes and some gutters, some ups and some downs, but overall, good year of Magic.
If this is the worst, I will take it.
Exactly.
Yeah, all right. Move here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHoarder.com and AltarSleeves.com, my co-host, MTG Nerd Girl, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.